At the Mental Health Foundation, we always start our workshops and the things we do together with the Karakia. So this morning, this is the karakia we choose for working well, opening the space. So karakia is an incantation. It's thought of as prayer. It's around actually bringing us together and sort of setting the scene and saying this is the intention we hope to achieve with our time together. So ono hia te pau whiri marama, tumokia te au whatu tangata, te tai ki runga, te tai ki raro, te tai ahurau, homi e, hui e, tai eke e. So from the confusion comes understanding, from the understanding comes unity. We are interwoven, we are interconnected together as one. And I always think of that opening as what workshops and what learning is all about. It's about actually taking something we're wanting to learn, understanding, but doing that together, I think is a really, really strong way to do that. So as said, please do ask questions as you go. I may not answer them immediately, but I will come back to them. Also, happy, if it is something that's come up about a slide or about what I've said, I'll keep an eye on that and respond as I can. So today, we were looking at how do we look after our mental health in times of uncertainty. So that reimagining is so important at the moment because we're not in the same place and at the same time as we were 3 months ago, 6 months ago. It's been a bit of a roller coaster, and it's really set in, I think, with this lockdown that we're actually in for the long haul, and so what do we need to look after when we're thinking about our mental health and well-being? So it really is about finding balance. The thing about mental health is it is not just about minimizing risk. You actually need to also increase protective factors. Mental health is something that we look after by not we can't avoid all the risks that are out there. So what we need to do is build those protective factors around us. We also need to think about our mental health in a holistic way. So using the model Whare Tapa Wha, which comes from Mason Jury and the Māori Women's Welfare League, is an Indigenous model that talks about holistic haora, so overall well-being. So we need to have 4 strong walls. So thinking about it, we need a strong body, tinana, we need a healthy physical good health, we need healthy connections, family and whānau, we need strong mental health and emotional health, that's taha hininaro, and we also need that taha wairua, that spirituality, that's about connection to things that are bigger than ourselves, connection to, it could be an organised religion, but it's actually a sense of purpose of belonging and being a part of something that is outside of ourselves. We also add in there for the 4 walls, we try and highlight the whenua, the land, connection to actually places and spaces, because the health of the land is also as important to our well-being as all the other elements to it. So for Māori, that's part of wairua, it's part of being well. We highlight that a little bit more, just because for other cultures that link to whenua isn't as strong. So what we're looking at today is, okay, how do we find that balance? How do we look at minimising the risk factors and increasing the protective factors? And to do that, we kind of have to understand a little bit about what mental health is. And we summarise mental health as sort of 3 core aspects to this. It's around your feelings, so feeling good or having life satisfaction. It's around actually functioning well and having good connections. So the idea is having high mental health or good well-being or flourishing means you feel good, you function well, and you've connected most of the time. but we don't live in a void, we live in a world. So individually, we need an environment that supports that as well. So we need to have an environment where we feel safe. And I put safety first deliberately. It's pretty hard to feel good and function well and be connected if you don't feel safe. So psychological safety, we think about that a little bit less sometimes in workplace settings. We think about our physical safety, but more and more we're becoming aware that the risks to our mental health, our psychological safety of stress, fatigue, bullying, those sorts of things is actually has an impact. And we know that it doesn't just impact our mental health, it carries through to our physical health and our relationships. We need a supportive environment, an environment where things are fair and empathetic. And of course, we also need an environment that boosts our mental health, that strengthens our mental health. We have opportunities to actually learn, we have opportunities to express our identities, we have opportunities to grow. So with all of the things I'm going to talk about today in mental health, there's no one magic element. We need balance, and we need to actually think about all of these things. So as we go through, I'm kind of exploring different ways and things that you will look at when you're thinking about your mental health. But what we try and do is actually make them actionable. So not just a general, hey, think about your mental health. Want you to think about what makes me feel good to boost those protective factors. What do I need to function well? What is it that helps me do a good job or achieve the goals I have to do? What are my connections? How are my relationships? How do I get a sense of belonging and feel valued? And as groups and as part of communities, how can I help people feel safe? How can I be supportive to people? And what can I do as a manager or a teammate to actually boost people's mental health and well-being? And that sort of introduces nicely this idea of the resilience model. This was presented by John Rayburn many years ago, and he talked about the fact that it's not an individual thing, resilience. We don't live in that void. We actually live in an environment. And in fact, if you think of the term haora, which is about the holistic idea of well-being for Māori, it talks about 42 wins. I think I might have got that number wrong, that haora isn't something that lives in isolation. It's in an environment. Well-being doesn't exist outside the environment that you're in. So you do need individual skills and habits, but you also need to have a supportive environment. And right now, if you think about what's happening, COVID has and the response to COVID has impacted how we feel, how we function, and our connections. It's really questioned how safe we are. It's actually, in some cases, really emphasised how supportive we can be of each other, but it's also made it harder for some people to get supports. And I know in the first Rahui, or when we went to level 4 as a nation, I think it really did strengthen our opportunities to do good things for our well-being and boost it. And it also sort of made it harder to do that. So in that environment of supportive environments, what can we do in this what I think of more as a marathon than a sprint of the next few months, hope months that we're facing now, is to think about how we can create an environment that promotes a sense of safety. So that actually creates a sense of calm, because we will have ups and downs. The diagram in the middle here is saying this is our life course. We will go up and down. It's natural, it's normal. Our feelings, our connections, the relationships will change. So how do we promote a sense of safety for all of us, whether we're in that low patch or way up higher? How do we promote calm? So this is important before, and after we start interacting with people who might be struggling, but also actually ongoing wise is what do we need to ensure people feel safe? So good, clear messages is one of those things about hand hygiene, all of those things, but also that we'll get through this, that this is new, it's different, but actually we're managing really well. Or this didn't go so well and we can do better. So that leads on to the third thing we want to promote is self and collective efficacy. So how do we work together to find solutions? So it's not about doing for and taking over, it's about sitting down together and working through, okay, what's going on? How do we together actually get through this? Because that sense of efficacy, that sense of I have some control and power is really important to mental health and well-being. We want to promote connection, so that might be actually making sure we do these sorts of meetings, making sure you chat and catch up with people, but it's also, okay, who else is out there that can help? So in times of distress or stress, it's like, who else can we connect to support and help solve this problem? And we always want to be promoting hope. So these are components of psychological first aid. I think these are really important things to think about at the moment, because much like the earthquakes and other disasters New Zealand's faced, what we often find is right at the beginning we're doing okay because we all have that shared sense of purpose. But right now it's been dragged out and all of our energy and resilience is maybe a bit low. So we've got to actually think about pulling back together and think about how do we get through the long haul, because this is what we're experiencing and what the impacts are. Um, how we thought the world worked has been disrupted. It's had a huge impact on our belief systems and how we think things should work and the way the world should happen. That's just that is going to actually, for many people, create sense of grief and challenge and change, and they're going to have reaction to that. I have ups and downs myself personally. It's like working from home is great, yay, and then I really miss the people in the office, and it's so much harder to do that collaborative work. You know, there's I thought this was going to be happening at this time of the year, so we've got perceived future losses happening. We have got actual losses happening. Opportunities have been taken away. So there's all this change. So the human brain is designed to actually go, oh no, and be stressed about it. It's okay, because actually it's a really normal human reaction to do that. You know, when we what we thought was safe and certain is disruptive, our brain goes, we need to pay attention to this. It's going to affect people differently. There's going to be a range of experiences. So you've got the people who are worried and well. I don't like the phrase worried well. I think it's diminishing. Um, People are worried, but they're not actually directly impacted by the physical illness or by job loss or by change, but they're worried things could happen. You've got people who've been impacted by what's happening. Now, you, we are a country that has international links. A lot of our businesses and your business and things will have contacts overseas. We have lots of people who have chosen to shift to New Zealand and live in New Zealand, whose workplace they've been impacted. We've been really lucky in New Zealand that the impact and the bereavement from COVID has been low, but we still have bereaved. So we have people who can't travel back to see their family or can't come to New Zealand. So there's a range of experiences, and that's going to be on a continuum for different people. Some people will be at the low end of the worry, and some people will be at the everything is terrible end of the worry, and probably the truth is somewhere in the middle, and we need to accept people in their different spaces. And what kinds of distress we're going to see is, again, different for different people. At the moment, most of us are probably experiencing the cumulative stress and distress because this has been going on for a while, and every day there's something different, and we have to adapt and we have to change. There's going to be people who have had extreme or traumatic stress, and that is where a direct impact has happened to them, and they're directly impacted by what's going on, and they'll need some support through that. And of course, we will all be experiencing, to a certain extent, vicarious or secondary stress from seeing what's going on around us. So that's where it's not directly impacting us, but actually we're with colleagues who are impacted, we're seeing the news, we're doing those sorts of things. So I probably could have simply said, being kind and compassionate and understanding at this time is really important, because different people are experiencing things differently. Even if they sit right next to you, or, and you go, okay, I'm okay about this, for someone else, we don't know what's going on for them. So that kindness and compassion is really important. And this is really important, and it sounds really, really simple. You're going to have feelings. I don't know if we're good as a nation about talking about feelings, but grief is something that's going to be happening for a lot of us. Grief isn't just about bereavement. Obviously, that's a huge impact. But grief around change, grief about anticipated loss. And with that, and with what's happening, we're going to feel confused, we're going to feel anxious. And some people, there's going to be moments where we feel really excited about this. It's a challenge that we can really get our teeth into. And I think it's really important to notice those things as we're going, that actually I was able to solve a problem. I was able to anticipate this. I actually managed to shift from working from home and back to the office. Those things, it's not bad. Basically, we need to really non-judgmentally go, oh, I feel like this. It might be a surprise, but that's okay. And actually just really listen, because one of the things about this process is it's not something you can skip. You are going to have feelings, and pretending they're not there can be really unhelpful at times. So what can help is you want to ignore the impulse to fix. Um, I think I live in a country, and this is my view of New Zealand, are really kind, really supportive people who want to make things better. And you want to fix it. And you want to come in there and go, I'm going to take those feelings away. Feelings aren't inherently bad, they just are. So try not to fix the feelings, normalize and talk about those feelings, and be okay that there's going to be difference there. So you'll need to be patient and show some compassion there. You might not understand why the other person or your team feels that way, but they do. And then with the I want to help aspect of our urges is think about the practical supports that can be put in. And we've got a slide after this where we can talk about those levels. But the first practical thing you can do is, if someone's really distressed, start with emotional regulation, which is basically saying getting our brain from the stressed out one into a calmer one, because we can't think if we don't do that. And practice the balanced thinking, because what we want to do is sort of move around away from ruminating about the negative all the time, to actually being able to have and train our brain to think about what also is happening. So thinking about, instead of but and or, it's the word and. This hurts and that helps. So you're basically moving from intrusive thinking into deliberate thinking. Yes, this is a difficult time, and what can I do about it? And I've managed to get through today. That's great. So it's about feeling safe and worrying less, because we trigger chemicals in our brain. So when you're thinking about the not fixing and the practical supports, what we're looking at is really moving away from thinking about the only thing we can do about our feelings is send someone to EAP or send someone to a counsellor. Most people don't need that. Most people actually need some basic supports. Right now, what's my worry? I'm worried about paying rent. What's my worry? I don't want to catch public transport at the moment in Auckland. So practical things. Then there's the community support, so linking up, that connecting again with different community organisations, and that community can be a work community. Then actually, hey, if you need to go talk to someone, a counsellor or general people, to talk about those more focused kind of specific skills you might need to develop to look after stress and anxiety, that's a smaller group of people. And a much, much smaller group of people will need specialist mental health care. So when we're thinking about who we are and what we can do to look after mental health, it's actually realizing that each one of us has the ability to actually support ourselves, but also support those around us. And this diagram is part of that process of actually explaining that. So we talk about mental health in a dual continuum. Traditionally, and I don't know if you can see my mouse on the screen when I do this, but we think about no mental illness symptoms as mental health, and mental illness symptoms as not having it. So it's like we've traditionally been taught you either have mental health or you don't. And that's kind of not true. Mental health is a little bit more complicated than that. I experience mental illness symptoms consistently. I experience ongoing an anxiety disorder. So I'm on medication. So I have mental illness symptoms and I have a diagnosis. Other people can experience mental illness symptoms but not have a mental illness. So the symptom of anxiety, of a palpitating heart, or a little panic attack doesn't mean you have a mental illness. It means right now you're experiencing really high anxiety. So that's one of the differences. The second one is what we do to treat mental illness symptoms doesn't necessarily lift our mental well-being. We need to think about the things and actions we do to actually move people from low mental well-being or languishing to high mental well-being or flourishing are often really different from treating symptoms of an illness. So for me, I take medication and that really reduces my level of physical and mental anxiety, but that doesn't help me have a great work life or connect with my family. It takes away a little bit of a barrier, but actually it's these things, the 5 ways to well-being and a couple of other key important things that are going to support people to move up from low mental well-being to high mental well-being. And what we want to think about is we want to shift everybody up towards the top, whether or not wherever they are on the continuum of symptoms or no symptoms. And these things are things that communities and everybody can do. So you've been learning about the 5 ways of wellbeing all week, so I'm not going to spend too much time going through those, but these are evidence-based actions that we can all take at different levels. So keeping learning, give, take notice, be active and connect. We have a plant way down the bottom there because the other things that weren't talked about in the 5 ways to wellbeing in a public health campaign is nutrition and connecting with nature. Those are 2 really important ways to look after your mental health and well-being. What you eat and eating healthy and whole foods and those sorts of things is really important. So you want to think about your body and your brain is part of your body and looking at feeding it well, and getting out and connecting in nature is a really important way of actually refilling your cup. At the top, we have a couple of people lifting a box which symbolises work. Work is massively important towards your mental health and well-being. It gives you a sense of identity and those sorts of things. That we know people in work often have higher mental health, well-being than those who are unemployed. It gives you an opportunity basically to do the 5 ways to well-being on a regular basis. But work, unfortunately, also can have a really negative effect. One of the key things about work is it good, healthy work? So thinking about, is it safe? Is it supportive? And does it strengthen your well-being? And the reason we want to think about it is often when we talk about mental health and well-being at work, we just think about stress and work stress. And I think it's actually is key to think about it, because that's what is causing us distress. Stress is not bad. Stress is a really good thing. It actually puts us into a place where we need to take action. If we're totally relaxed about everything, probably not going to get as much stuff done as when we're motivated to go, actually, this needs to get done. I've got to get it done now. So there's a really good comfort zone there. When we are unduly and for long periods of time pushed past that comfort zone, we're going to lead into that fatigue, exhaustion, bad health, and burnout. So we need actually to think about where people are at. For some people who have been unable to work, they might be on the other side where they're actually got the boredom, the frustration, the dissatisfaction because they're unable to participate. So right now, we've got to think about that people are under probably a lot of distress and we want to minimize it. One of the things our bodies haven't adapted as much as we might think is we're not really aware often of where our stress levels are. We're really good when they're really bad at going, I'm stressed out. But we don't just notice over the day or over the week or over a period of time that slow build and that sort of maintain stress signs that our bodies have, and really need to start to take notice and recognize those signs in yourself. Are there parts of your body that get tense? Do you forget words when you're getting a bit flustered? Are you a bit short with people? What are the early signs of stress? Because that's the time to start practicing actually maybe releasing those stress things. Why is it important? Because our brains actually change once we're in distress. Um, we we release hormones that make thinking and processing information difficult. It actually turns off a kind of thinking brain. We become very narrow in our thinking, and that's why it can be a really good thing. And actually the stress of going earlier in the year, how are we going to work from home, for many people would have put a lot of focus because of that training and the thought you'd already had and the skills you already had. You would have closed out some of the other problems, focused in on that one and been able to actually work through it really, really well. But not everyone's the same. We're different. For other people who might have been new to the job and didn't know the systems very well, that stress, they didn't have the knowledge and the brain power to actually use their full brain to go, oh, I should ask someone. You become so narrow that you actually lose options in your thinking. And the other thing you'll notice is it will lead to rapid reactions and strong emotional reactions. So we kind of need to know this, because that's what you might be experiencing yourself, but also when you're supporting other people. When people are really stressed out, they're going to be a bit more emotional. So we go back to actually first thing you deal with is that emotional regulation, and sort out what's going to keep someone calm and safe right then. So what do you do? What's really important is, again, not one thing, you need to do three. I like my list of three as we go through this presentation. It's not just me, it's actually the scientists and other people who do this. First of all, you need to refuel. You need to look after your well-being and cultivate the energy to refuel. So you've got to look after your body. You've got to look after your mind. You've got to do things that bring you joy. You've got to actually connect with people. So those going for walks, those 5 ways that people promoted, get outside, go for a walk. It sounds, when you're in a deep level of stress, like, how's going for a walk going to solve this problem? It's going to help you relax. It's going to help you turn on that thinking brain so that you actually can solve that problem, which is the next step. If you can resolve the problem or resolve the stressor, then it's not going to stress you anymore. And finding solutions that help resolve the cause of stress. So in this case, COVID is not in our control. Some of the work practices that you have to do are not in your control. So when we talk about resolving things, we need to look at, actually, it might not be resolving the main stressor, but it's what's the worry for you. And we'll talk about that in the next slide. And the last thing, and the really important thing that you need to practice every day, several times a day, is relax. That is, I know, the worst thing you can say to someone at the time they are really, really stressed out. Don't go, just relax. It's like, okay, we need to actually make people safe, but actually when things are building, turning on that relaxation response is really important. So doing some deep breathing is a really quick way to do that. So in through the nose, out through the mouth. You want to expand your belly when you're breathing in, and then breathe out. And to relax, it helps if you breathe out for slightly longer than you breathe in for. And doing that 2 or 3 times sitting at your desk, progressive, if you start feeling tense in your muscles, progressive muscle relaxation's a really good thing to do. So clenching your fists for a few seconds, and usually I do that on an in-breath, and then relaxing them on the out-breath. Clenching your toes. You can go from toes to head, or you could just, if you're standing in a meeting and noticing you're getting a bit flustered, just do your toes, because no one's going to notice that you're in your shoes clenching your toes and relaxing them, because that actually is moving those chemicals, moving those hormones, and actually changing that state for you. And it's really important to remember the cumulative kind of stress does sneak up on us. We actually will not realise perhaps how stressed we've been till someone walks in the door and the reporter's late and you suddenly are blowing up at them, or you get home and you just can't do anything that day. And so pay attention to that body. Take notice is about mindfulness, but take notice is one of the most powerful of the 5 ways, because it's asking you to listen to yourself as well as those around you and being present. And that means not just listening to the words, but paying attention to how your body feels, paying attention to how you react, and learning from that. So when we talk about resolve, in the situation we're in now, it's and most days is actually ask, what is the worry I have? Don't worry, and dig that a little bit more than I'm worried about COVID-19, or I'm worried about the financial sector, and it's like, what is the worry? That my family will get sick, that I will get sick, that I'll lose my job. Name the worry, because often we dismiss our thinking. Then think about what would make me feel safer and less worried. Asking my boss maybe, how secure is my job? And sometimes you're not going to be able to say for sure it's 6 months. It's like, look, right now we know that we will be okay for the next month, or this is the actions we're taking. And think, about the balanced thinking about what's the impact going to be if the worst happens or if the best happens. What can I do about it? What do I need? I need information. I need reassurance. I need to actually go out and find a piece of paper. I need to know that I can feed my kids tomorrow. So it's actually going, what's the need? And then also thinking about who can help. It's not about big, long projects. Think about this as steps along the way. Solving a problem isn't solving COVID or making sure the economy. It's right now, I know that I've got a job for the next 2 weeks. I can relax a little bit. This isn't tomorrow. This isn't the crisis it is. And I know for different sectors, there's been that is one of the biggest worries that people have in the workplace is is my job safe? So that's the sort of thing to think about. What is it people need to hear? What is the clear messaging? When it's about becoming sick because I have to come into the office, what is it can we control? Well, we'll make sure people social distance. We've got a cleaning roster. These are the practical things that we're doing because it's about worrying less. And then finally, one of the things about going through these unexpected trials, which are not trials, they're just happening in the world. It's not a test on us. This is something that actually we can get through. One of the things that can happen is we actually can support growth and finding meaning when people are ready. Don't rush to this. People need to be in the space where they're at. So you go back and think, are they safe? What supports do they need? These are opportunities actually where we can look at post-grief, post-traumatic growth. And 5 things that can help support that growth during difficult times is actually talking about it, talking about the feelings, talking about how hard it has been, but also the exploration of new possibilities. I bet you've all had to change the way you've worked. I bet you've all had to change the way you've done other things. And there's probably been some real aha moments of why don't we do this more often? Why did we only do this after this? It's like there's new possibilities. And actually, there's new possibilities of, okay, maybe I'm going to have to change my role. And it's like there's some positives in there. Exploring how relationships may have improved at work, at home, with friends. You might have actually been more connected with people, or you might have actually improved relationships by actually focusing on the ones that give you the most. I hope, and I would like my challenge for you all to think about today is what are the personal strengths you've actually discovered over this period of time? They don't need to be like the people we see on the internet and on the news running a marathon around my house for 2 weeks or anything like that. But personal strengths could be that actually, my family, I was there for them and I was able to listen to their stresses and support them with that. My personal strength was I actually got up every single day and went to work. They're not things that you need to do miracles or amazing things. Sometimes getting out of bed is a strength. Because there's been days I've got to say in the last 6 months where it's like, no, I don't want to do that today. But I did. So I take those small victories, and it's a really important thing to think about. Reminding yourself about those small victories, because otherwise our brains can often think about the negative. Appreciation. We can actually have a growth and appreciation of others, of processes, of actually systems. Kindness. Kindness is the thing people will remember more than anything else over this period of time. The people who were kind to them. So we might actually find some appreciation of others, and that can help us actually grow. And spiritual growth. Often after major trauma, loss, grief, one of the things that people find is they find a bigger connection with something spiritual. And sometimes it's religious, sometimes it's more personal and individual. So what I like to talk about here is what's happening now and with grief is, if you think about a piece of paper, nice flat white, about to put it in the photocopier, and something happens and you end up creasing it or screwing it up. You can flatten that piece of paper out again, but it's not going to be the same. There's creases and marks in it. And people are like that. We don't end up the same after events. They impact us, they change us, we grow. So we're not looking at going backwards and saying, I wish everything was the way it was. That's okay to wish that, and it isn't. And how am I going to be in this new space? And how you're going to be is going to change you and change those around you. And what we try and do with looking after your mental health and well-being is actually give you space to actually think and choose how that can work, and choose ways that actually can support you to manage it, so actually keep you safe, but actually also grow from it. Because, all those corny things about pressure making diamonds and those sorts of things, but actually it's about going, this experience is happening to me, how do I get through it the best I can? So just to go back, because I feel like I've told you a lot of information, these are the two key things. Find balance. Think about yourself as a whole person that's in a community. Think about, actually, how am I looking after all these areas of my life? Relationships, whānau, your mental and emotional well-being. Pay attention to your feelings, let them be. Your spiritual well-being, what are you connected to? What's important to you? And your physical well-being. And try and minimize, this is really important over this period of time, minimize risk factors. If you're under a lot of stress, what can you not do? So try not to add. And often when we're stressed, we actually say yes to more work. So think about it and go, actually, I'm going to minimize some of those risk factors. But at the same time, think about what makes you feel good. You want to increase those protective factors. So don't hide in your house, as I have been doing for the last week because I'm working from home. Make sure, if you are working from home or in the office, you get out, you go for a walk, you do those sorts of things that are going to boost your mental health and well-being. You've got to get both sides. And finally, there are organisations, and you can come to our website to support and get more specific information. A half hour or an hour chat is not always going to give you everything you want. I hope it's been helpful. And I'll make sure that Emily has links to different articles and information about that. I have not been getting any group chat questions, so happily if there are any. But what I'll do is I'll close with a karakia. I think we have 10 minutes, is that right, Emily? So, and then if I stop sharing the screen, and then we can, if anybody actually wants to just ask a question, like with their voice, that would be fine too. So just to close this off with a karakia. Kia whakairia te tapu, kia waitia ai te ara, kia turuki whakataha ai, kia turuki whakataka taha ai, homie, hui, taiaki. Restrictions are moved aside so the pathway is clear to return to everyday activities.